So I wanted to add some debugging capability to the application to just make it a little bit easier without necessarily having to go into the console. So there's a flag that you could put in, probably change the name to debug booking flow. There was a little bit of a typo. But there's a flag that you could put into local storage. So if I open up local storage over here, I should see that if I go over here and I look at local storage, I'll see my debug booker flow flag set to 1. And what that'll end up doing is that I don't necessarily have to keep this debug open. If I end up going to book now, since that flag is there, I'll see a lot of helpful information at the bottom of my page. So right off the bat, I could see all the analytic history that's showing up here. So for instance, if I go to click on details, I could see that that call ended up getting made, that I went to make this call to look at makeup, right? This will show that I ended up looking at manicure. This will show that I ended up clicking on an add-on, that I ended up selecting an add-on. So this is really helpful to see what calls end up getting made to the tracking history. This might be a little bit less helpful, but I was also tracking the amount of time that you're spending on each step. So these are all the different, these are basically the booking state changes themselves. One thing that's also pretty helpful is what's happening in the current state. So for instance, you remember there was we wanted to track if someone ended up clicking on this email link. So if I click on this, I'm not going to save it. If I go down here, I'll see that that analytic event got fired, this tag event, from nav, email, right, new booking in the version. But also I was telling you that that information is actually on the state over here. And really, it's on the state for analytics. Maybe at some point we'll figure out a way to have that come off. But, you know, for instance, if the user ends up clicking on book, they'll end up going to the next state. And a lot of these things are tracked. Clicking on different times, clicking on editing an address, and all these things will be tracked, and you can sort of get an idea if there's a new analytic call that needs to be made. You could find out pretty easily if in fact that's being made. So this is something that I think is going to help you, because I think again, everything's controlled by the state, and if you want to know what the state is at any given point in time, or what the current state is, the last time it was broadcast, you can see what the mode is, right? I'm on appointment, edit address. If I click on edit, where I'm editing my services, and taking a step back, and if I look at my mode, I'm on services here. So again, this will give you an idea of what your mode is, in fact, who your user is, what the market is, what market services the user has chosen, and also some additional information when they end up setting up an appointment. That'll be on here as well. There's a lot of information that's on here, but it makes it a little bit easier than having to go and figure out what's on the scope. You could find out what's on the scope because this is basically going to be what's on this current state. So hopefully that'll help as you're building things out here.